We're now waiting for Randy, who is here, and he will be introducing our next presenter, and he is also a member of our planning committee.
Sorry about that. I was working the crowd.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. All right. All right. Following her experience caring for her husband with Parkinson's disease dementia, Malenna Sumrall has dedicated herself to supporting others navigating neurologic illness. A peer navigator since 2017. Mike? All right, yeah, is that better? You want me to start over? All right, I'm kidding. Let me see. All right. A peer navigator since 2017 and longtime support group leader, she serves on multiple advisory councils and is chair of the Patient Care Partner Committee of the International Palliative Care Society. She has co-authored peer-reviewed articles presented nationally and internationally, and collaborates on research to improve care for patients and caregivers. Dr. Sumrall holds a PhD in educational research and brings both lived experience and academic insight into her advocacy work. Please join me in welcoming my good friend, Malenna Sumrall.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Randy for twisting my arm and making me be here. And what a great thing it's been. I've just really met a lot of people that I really admire. You're doing great work here. The second thing I'd like to say is that I'm not sure. No, I'm fine. I don't know. Can you see me? Oh, okay. Better? Okay. Well, I thought this was just for the really short people. After Dr. Rao's presentation, I'm not sure I even need to be here. That was just wonderful. She just had so many good ideas that I think are helpful to all of us. So let me see if I can make this work. Okay, so I will talk about the life of a Parkinson's care partner. We'll talk a little bit about the challenges and impact of being a Parkinson's care partner. And then we'll also talk a little bit about how you can advocate for better care for both you and your loved one. So I think Randy kind of hit on my background pretty well. My husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's in the year 2000. By 2006, he was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, and then the dementia diagnosis came in 2009. The neurological care that we experienced ranged from like really, really bad to superb. We had a general neurologist to start with. His specialty was Alzheimer's, and he really didn't know much about Parkinson's, so he was misdiagnosing symptoms, giving us the wrong medications that made things worse. You know, we could hardly wait to get out of there, but there really wasn't much of any place to go. Finally, there was a movement disorder specialist that came to our state. We were in Alabama at the time, and if you want to boo, that's okay. There you go, right. And that was a big help. But again, it was primarily focused on treating the physical symptoms of my husband, and there was really nothing there for me. So in 2014, we moved to Colorado, and there we were assigned to Dr. Benzie Kluger, who had just started a neuropalliative clinic. And so at the first appointment, he looked at us and, you know, he realized how much we needed that by that time. And he was the only doctor in 14 years who ever asked me how I was. Can you imagine how that felt? I said I was overwhelmed, which I was, but it's the first time I'd ever felt like I could say that. So anyway, palliative care was a huge help, and yet it was during the last couple of years of my husband's life, but you know, you wish you'd had it all along, but you're thankful for it whenever you get it, and it really was helpful. So I think Randy kind of described most of what my background has been. I've been part of advisory councils since actually starting while my husband was still alive, because Dr. Kluger asked me to start doing things, and I said yes. It was wonderful to work with him. So let's talk about the total pain of Parkinson's, because there's a lot that goes in that. You probably already know that. There's the physical part: neuropathy, insomnia, fatigue, sleep issues, limited mobility. I'm preaching to the choir here, I know. But there are also emotional issues that are part of it: anger and frustration. And I think Dr. Rao did a great job of talking about how to deal with some of these things: agitation, anxiety, and depression. There are also social issues that are part of it. Social stigma is something I don't know that actually gets enough recognition, but I know people with Parkinson's, certainly my husband, felt a little bit embarrassed about having it, afraid that people would view them as less than or something. My husband wouldn't tell anybody except close family members that he had Parkinson's for the first 2 years. And when he finally did, you know, I think it was a relief to him, but I understood why he didn't want to say that. And then there are spiritual issues that can be part of this. You feel like you've lost your identity, you've lost your sense of meaning. And for my husband, by the time we saw Dr. Kluger, he'd lost both his physical capacity and his mental capacity. And you think, well, what's left? You know, what's left of me? So there are all these things that are part of the journey, and the care partner is like trying to figure out all through this, how do I deal with this? There's also a big impact on care partners, and again, I'm probably telling you something you already know. How many times have you felt guilty? I hear that all the time in my support groups. Burnout, for sure, stress. It can be hard to communicate with your spouse as maybe voices get weaker and so forth. It's hard to communicate with other people about what you're going through unless they've been there. You lose some independence. Your life changes. The goals that you had, you have to give up on some of those. And then some people worry about, some care partners, about, you know, what happens if my health deteriorates and I can't care for this person anymore? There was even, and I was asked about this in some presentations that I used to give at support groups. You know, I've heard that caregivers die first. What about that? And at the time, I didn't really know the answer. I hadn't looked it up, but there seemed to be this thought that there was over a 50% chance that caregivers would die first. Well, I looked into that a little bit and realized that that information came from people who were misinterpreting a study that was done in 1999. What happened with that study is that they looked at people who were caregivers and, you know, looked at the mortality rate there. Then they looked at people who were non-caregivers and looked at their mortality rate. And what they found was that caregivers had a 63% greater mortality risk than non-caregivers. But does that tell you whether you're going to die before your spouse? No, there wasn't any comparison there that looked at, you know, you versus your spouse. So I found a study that actually did that, and they did compare this person with Parkinson's versus their spouse with Parkinson's, with their spouse, and then looked to see in that couple who died first, and what they found was that only 18% of the care partners died first. This mortality myth has been going around for a long time. 18% is still not great, but you have to consider that care partners also have some health issues that creep up on them, and that may have been the cause for some of them. So regardless, your health and your well-being do take a hit. So what do you need to do? You need to, I know you hear this a lot, practice self-care, but we're going to talk about that a little bit too. First of all, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. What works for one person does not work for another. What makes you feel better and relaxed may just irritate the heck out of somebody else. You also need to think that it is self-preservation rather than self-indulgence, whatever you choose to do. So late in my husband's journey, I would get online and I'd look for self-care tips. And I'd see things like go on a wellness retreat, right? Hire a fitness instructor, massage, mani-pedi. And then these really got me. Take a day off each week and a week off each month. Who can do that? So I thought, there's something wrong out there if they think that we're living that kind of life. So it kind of irritated me. And I even mentioned that to Dr. Kluger, and I said, this is crazy. They don't understand this. And I think that's when he said, I think I need you to be part of some of my research. One of the things that happens is that the self-care and wellness industry kind of encourages us to do things that is supposed to help us feel better and so forth. But, remember, a lot of it's just advertising, so we don't need to fall for that. Vitamins, taking the right vitamin or supplement, the right kind of soap. And no, you're going to have to find your own way. And this kind of leads you into what we call faux self-care. It's not really self-care. It's just helping out the advertisers and so forth. So how can we avoid the faux self-care? First of all, have you ever tried a tip and you just thought, well, I don't feel any better. As a matter of fact, maybe I feel a little bit worse for wasting the time on that. Yeah, I think we do some of that. So we need to learn to stop being controlled by guilt created by the advertisers or even by friends' suggestions. People, a lot of people think they know what you should be doing. You need to kind of find your own way, and what you need to do is to look honestly at what you need and give yourself permission to have it, and then find a practical way to meet those needs. Don't let yourself be controlled by the guilt. Look honestly at what you need. There are two concepts of well-being. One is temporary relief, another is long-lasting relief, and both have their place. They can both be beneficial. Feeling relief for even 10 minutes can be a bonus. And although your primary purpose may be caring for your loved one, smaller things count. So, and if you look at the long-lasting relief, they're different. Having a purpose yourself, well, yes, that's taking care of your loved one, right? But having a sense of accomplishment, having connections, and feeling inner peace also help you out. Being part of a support group is a way to help others. That can be your purpose. I know in the support groups that I lead that they are so helpful to each other. And they always, I think they feel better, and they get compliments from each other for, what they do. So I think that's a really almost an easy way to have a purpose, because you need to be there anyway, perhaps. Accomplishment can be small things, like maybe even just getting the laundry done. Just simple things. Give yourself credit for what you do, and maybe even kind of keep a list. We talk about keeping a gratitude list. You can do that as well with your accomplishments. One of the things that I did, because I was paying people to come in and help in the home and paying pretty good money for that, and I thought, they're getting paid all this money to do what I do for free. And so I decided to start kind of paying myself on paper, and I would just take a certain number of hours a week. I certainly didn't count the 24/7 that I was doing, because that would be too much, but then I took maybe 40 hours a week, and then I said, okay, if I were just getting minimum wage. I did all that on paper, kept track of how much it was, and then at the end of the month, I'd look at my total, and I think, okay, I've got maybe $200-300. I can actually go out and do something nice for myself. And that actually made me feel like I had a little more value. I did enjoy that part of it. Inner peace, goodness, Dr. Rao really talked about that. You know, meditation, and I think she just did a wonderful job. Gratitude journals, time in nature is another thing that a lot of people find helpful. But something else that you need to consider is focusing on what you can control. There are plenty of things we can't control. Other people, the weather, cats, for heaven's sakes. But we can advocate for better care. And we can set our own boundaries and stick to them. You can control where you put your energy. You can control the choices that you make. And you can control how you advocate for better care. So let's talk a little bit about that. If you're going to advocate, there are things that you need to know up front. And if you're advocating for better treatment with Parkinson's, one of the things that you need to understand is what the symptoms are that you should be recognizing in order to advocate for help with those symptoms. So I was hoping that showed up. It's a lot of information. Yeah, you may have seen like the Parkinson's iceberg, and there are things at the top that, you know, people will recognize. The tremors, stiffness, posture problems, those are pretty easy to see. And most people, I mean, we were talking last night at dinner about being able to just see people walking that we don't know when we kind of recognize some of the symptoms, those of us that have been around Parkinson's for a long time. So yeah, I think that guy's got Parkinson's. But then there are some things that you may know about, you may recognize, but not necessarily, not everybody does. The weakness in voice, a lot of people don't associate that outside the Parkinson's world. Memory loss, slowed movement, pain and fatigue are part of it. And then things that we hardly ever recognize as part of Parkinson's: dizziness, bladder issues, I'm not going to read the whole list, micrographia, getting the handwriting that gets smaller and smaller, vision problems. My husband ended up having vision problems, and of course your first thought is to go to the eye doctor, but the neurologist picked up on that and sent us to a specific ophthalmologist that helped with that. Sleep problems, REM behavior disorder, acting out in your sleep. So you need to kind of educate yourself about what the symptoms are, and this is a list of things, but you can certainly find more on some of the Parkinson's organization's websites. There are a lot of good information out there. The other thing, if you're going to advocate, is you need to know your rights. What are your rights as a patient? There are medical rights, legal, financial, family medical leave. Nonprofit organizations will have lists of, some of them do, they have their lists of patient rights. And so you can find some things on there that are helpful. For care partners, you have rights too. And you can kind of develop your own rights if you want to, but the Family Caregiver Alliance has a list of caregiver rights that you might want to take a look at. Then, once you know your rights, you need to try to determine what your goals and preferences are. You know, your life is changing in a way that you didn't realize it was going to. So some of the things that you thought were going to be part of the long-term time that you've got left, they're not there anymore. Maybe you wanted to travel a lot, and that's gotten to be too hard. So you really need to have these good talks with each other, and then with your physician, your neurologist. So once you know them, talk with your medical providers, also your financial advisors. Get your legal documents in place, because that you may have to think about that a little differently. And then there is a website that I wanted to mention, and you've got a list of resources in your packet that I wanted to share. A lot of them are things that you already know, but the Ariadne Labs have something on their webpage, two things of interest. One is called Serious Illness Conversations, and that's primarily for neurologists who are trying to find ways to approach the subject. You know, how do you approach the subject that is, okay, maybe it's time we need to start thinking about hospice. When is it time? And that can be very hard for them to do. I know neurologists that say, I really, really hate when I have to start broaching those subjects. But there's also on Ariadne Labs called What Matters to Me. And it's a good thing for you to look through, because it kind of helps you consider what choices you might have and what your preferences might be. So now that you've got your rights, you know your rights, and you've got your goals and preferences down, you need to start advocating for that. And one of the ways to do that, and since I've been involved in this world for about 10 years now, is palliative care. And palliative care added to the Parkinson's treatment is just, like I said, it was huge for us. It really does help. It's a holistic approach and addresses not just physical symptoms, but also the emotional, all those things that we saw in the iceberg. And you may not be able to find a neuropalliative clinic, but I'll show you something in a bit that may help with that. We know the first study I was involved with Dr. Kluger was to measure the effectiveness of palliative care in the treatment of Parkinson's. And what we found was that it did improve the quality of life for people with Parkinson's, and it also reduced caregiver burden. Those were two big things. So there are 5 pillars that guide this treatment. One is, first of all, addressing non-motor symptoms like we saw in the, I keep wanting to say the pyramid, the iceberg. Emotional and spiritual support, preparing for the future, planning and so forth, referrals to specialists, and then supporting care partners. That's one of the main things that this is part of this. The Parkinson's Foundation has now adopted this treatment model for all of its centers of excellence. So if you've got a center of excellence where you're getting treatment, then you should be able to tap into this. It's not just the neurologist that's going to be in charge of all of it. Well, maybe in charge, but he's certainly not going to do all of this. It takes a team. So when we were in the clinic, we saw the neurologist, Dr. Kluger, we saw a social worker, we saw the spiritual counselor, the chaplain, and then there was a nurse. Each one of them kind of had their own role, and they were wonderful. You may, and some clinics may even have a psychologist that's part of it. I know at one time, at least in Oregon, the clinic that they had there included their physical therapy, occupational therapy. So there are lots of different ways of approaching this, but they're all aimed at the same thing, and that's making sure that this disease process for both of you is as reasonable as possible. If you look at pillars 1 through 4, if you're taking care of symptoms and the emotional, spiritual support, planning for the future and so forth, then you're supporting the care partners. All of this really does help with, because if the person with Parkinson's is getting better treatment, then that's easier for you if they're getting medications that help or whatever. The one thing about this, though, is that you have to be really, really honest about what the symptoms are that you're experiencing, whether you are the patient or the care partner. One of the things that we found in that first study was that a lot of times when people would go to the doctor and they're trying, that, you know, your doctor may tell you to walk down the hall, you know, tap your nose, do all these kinds of things. This one guy said, whenever I do that, I'm always standing up as straight as I possibly can to try to walk down the hall. And we do that. And we kind of came up with the term of holding back for that. Care partners will do that as well. If the doctor says, "Oh, how are you doing?" we'll say, "Oh, I'm fine." Well, no, we're not sometimes, and we need to be able to be honest with them. Otherwise, they don't know, and they can't help us with that. There is a resource that I wanted to tell you about, because sometimes, even with great care where you are, it can take 3 to 6 months to get an appointment. And if you need something in the meantime, or if you're in a place where you can't access the palliative care, then there is this online service that offers neuropalliative care for Parkinson's in all 50 states. They have enough neurologists certified in enough of the states so that all 50 states are covered, no matter where you are. They can see you. They say if you request an appointment, you can probably see somebody within 2 weeks. That's pretty good. And they may help you with their own staff members in terms of some of the other issues besides the physical, or they may just refer you to some places in your own area. I met this woman a couple of years ago at a conference, and I thought, wow, what a great idea. Of course, we had to do a lot of telemedicine during the pandemic, but, this makes it available at other times too, if you want. And they do address all 5 of those pillars that we looked at. Another resource that you might want to try, or maybe you need to, I don't know, find a therapist. I don't know if you can see the small print up there, and I just clicked on the page that asked, what do you want to find? And I said, find a therapist. But they also have psychiatrists, treatment centers, and support groups. You can click on any of those and find something in your area. One of the things that's most helpful is to feel like you're helping others, and I think I mentioned a little bit about that. So advocating for others can be something that kind of is a little bit uplifting. Like I said, participating in support groups, the activities like you're all doing here, that's wonderful, and the walk that you're going to have, it's just, you're helping other people. You can volunteer. And that doesn't necessarily mean, being out someplace. There are all kinds of things that you can do just at home. You can participate in research, and maybe as a subject or by being on an advisory council. And I can tell you what a great experience that can be. Actually being in meetings with these neurologists and so forth that actually care about what you're saying, and they listen to your advice. They ask you questions. Well, why do you think this happened? That can be really important. You can support policy initiatives, and there are certain places that you can find online, one of which I recently discovered, and that was because I watched this PBS documentary called Caregiving. Have any of you seen that? Okay, it is wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful, and I think I put a link in the resources about that. It was mind-blowing because it talked about how the caregiving community just doesn't have the support that it needs. Certainly financially, how many of us get paid for all the hours that we're caregiving? And if we had to give up our job to do that, then we've lost salary, and we're not getting paid for anything. But there's also a lot of other stuff that goes on. You may need a lot of equipment, a lot of things, expenses come up. So in that documentary, there was this nonprofit called Caring Across Generations. And I think there's a link to that too. It is an advocacy group, and they will notify you of any bills that are coming up that you may want to support. And then it makes it really easy for you to do that. I've already done that a few times on some of the things I've found from them. So, after all that, you're caring for somebody, you're trying to care for yourself. How do you make a difference in the patient's care? Well, you provide emotional support, a second set of eyes and ears, physical care, nursing tasks, things you never thought you'd have to do, safety and supervision, companionship, and by doing that, you're helping the person you love achieve the goals that they have and yours if you're taking care of yourself. The result of all that is improved outcomes for both of you. So, here's what I want to tell you. I think you are heroic. You have to be to do what you're doing. Other people may think that you are, but they don't tell you. I'm telling you right now, and I'd like for you to stop and think about that yourselves. Regardless, you need to know that what you are doing is absolutely amazing. So I found this, quote, research on hugs. The number of times a person craves a hug in a day is 13. The number of seconds the average hug lasts is 9.5. The seconds needed for a hug to have medical healing properties is 20 seconds. So what's the conclusion? Hug long and hug often. All right, I think that winds me up. Let me see. Yeah, right. So, questions? And I think my contact information will be available somewhere, so yeah.
Thank you so much. That was very good. We enjoyed it. Now we have time for a few questions. If you want to raise your hand, we have some wonderful people going around with the microphones. So please raise your hand.
I think earlier it was noted that I won't be here for the Q&A session this afternoon, so I will be sticking around here for a little bit before I have to run to the airport and catch a plane. Oops, I need to stay here, don't I?
Okay. So, Malenna,
Yeah.
first of all, one thing that I know Dr. Kluger said in last year's conference was that he always schedules an appointment with the care partner, and just the care partner and himself, to make sure that he's getting the straight answer from the patient, number one, and number two, how, to find out how they're doing and provide for their needs as well. So
Yeah.
it's just a practice of his. That was just a quick comment, but I wanted to ask you a question. What's the difference between Parkinson's disease-related dementia and Alzheimer's dementia? Isn't it dementia?
There's a good bit of difference. I know with my husband, who had the Parkinson's version of it, or Lewy body, it wasn't a steady decline. It was so variable. And one day he'd be himself, and then the next day he's not. As a matter of fact, at the end of his life, the day before he died, he was wonderful. He was himself. He was talking, making sense. And the hospice nurse happened to be there that day, and she turned to me and she said, "You need to get him in the bed." And I thought, why? She knew. I don't know how she knew, but she did. I would never have guessed that. So, yeah, there's a good bit of difference. A comment about Dr. Kluger's, what you said Dr. Kluger said, that is an important thing. Because remember I told you about trying to be honest, but sometimes we don't want to be honest in front of each other. So it's really good if you can split up and have a little bit of time yourself with the doctor or somebody. Separately, somehow you may need to express your concerns, and then you're much better off if they understand where each of you are coming from.
Yes, ma'am. Just as the symptoms of Parkinson's vary so much individually from patient to patient, so does the situations with caregivers.
Yeah.
I mean, a caregiver at 60 years old can do certain things a caregiver at 80 years old can't do what a caregiver at 60 can do. And usually it's the spouse, so the patient would be 80 also. So you're dealing with a lot of different things. We live in Houma, which is a small town, south, Louisiana. The support group for caregivers, not readily available, so what do what can I or others in my situation do to get some kind of a support group, somebody that can identify with your particular situation?
That's why I started my Zoom support groups, because I was in your situation too. I couldn't find anything that was anywhere near me when I needed it. And so when I got the opportunity, I thought that would be a great thing to do, is to find a Zoom support group. And you'd think maybe that's not sufficient, but honestly, I've seen people just be as kind and close and honest with each other there. And then in my particular group, most of our people are in Colorado that are part of the group, but there's some that are from other states. The people that are there, we do try to get together in person once a year. But I think now that Zoom groups are more possible, you might look into that. And of course, you'll have my contact information. You're welcome to contact me if you think my group would be helpful too.
One of the things that has helped sustain me through this thing is we have a little group where the Parkinson's patients get together once a month and eat, but also the caregivers are there also. So we get to discuss a little bit about, but it's limited because you mostly just, hey, how you doing, that kind of stuff. It's not predicated on expressing your problems,
Right.
And so, but yeah, it can get overwhelming,
Right.
to say the least.
Maybe you could start your own Zoom group.
Right.
Yeah,
Patrice.
maybe so, huh?
Yeah.
If I just could find the time to do stuff, I just don't have
Exactly,
the energy. By the
right.
time I get through doing what I'm doing,
Yeah.
I want to sit down. I can't wait to get in bed so I can relax.
I
Because
know.
until I get in bed, I can't
Right.
relax.
Yeah.
So it's and I'm not going to spend that time calling up somebody and trying to put together a group.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get my own self back together.
Right. Yeah, I will tell you, it takes a good amount of my time, just keeping up with emails and so forth. So it does take some time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Good luck.
Patrice, did you have a comment?
We had two groups that formed out of our regular support group. Just real quick, just recently in Lafayette, we had two groups that kind of formed as a result of our main support group. One is for caregivers only, that meets once a month. Another one is for the person with Parkinson's, or the people with Parkinson's, that meet once a month. Only the people with Parkinson's. And it's been going beautifully. It's
Yeah.
really been a huge advantage for everyone.
Right.
And it was just people in the group that said, hey, y'all want to get together? And they went to the library and got a room,
Yeah.
free of charge.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to
Yes.
comment also.
I think, Randy, there was another
All right, I'm
question
sorry.
over here
There you go.
first, I think. Where
Wait.
was it? Yeah,
I don't,
right there.
As a caregiver, you will often get into some kind of conflict, with the patient. As the caregiver, is there some kind of advice as to how to handle the conflict resolution without it just resulting in a long-going argument about something? Is this a common occurrence between the caregiver and the patient?
you're talking about, I'm not sure I got all
I
that.
think the conflicts,
Yeah,
what
the
happens if you have a
Yeah.
conflict with the patient.
Right, yeah. That happens. And then we feel guilty when we react a certain way afterwards, and then we think, oh, I should have been better. Honestly, I think what Dr. Rao was telling you is probably the best advice. Do take the breath and do kind of give yourself space to just, watch her video again. It's gonna happen, and especially when dementia is involved. Because sometimes then they become a whole different person, and you don't understand why don't they get it. I've told them 14 times, where we're going to go, and they still don't get it. It's hard, and I don't really have a good answer for that except just, take a deep breath and realize that it's the disease and it's not the person. So if you can kind of depersonalize what's going on, maybe that'll help. But again, something else to bring up with your neurologist. They might help you. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that it?
Oh, wait, one more, and then we'll conclude after that.
Yes, I have experienced both. My dad had Parkinson's before I got it, and I went through every stage of what you had on that board, all the way through hallucinations because of medications. And the one thing that stuck in my mind, he lived to be 89. He exercised every day. He worked out in a wheelchair. I had arm weights and leg weights for him. And one of the things with me dealing with Parkinson's now is the exercise that I'm doing with the physical therapy. And I would encourage anybody, if you're taking care of somebody, try to get them to involve in some kind of exercise program, because it does really help.
That's good advice. I know I tried to do that with my husband, and he just resisted. We'd go to physical therapy, and we knew we needed to practice at home, and I'd get home, and he just, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So sometimes you face that battle too. But you're right. And the physical exercise gets oxygen to the brain, and I don't want to pretend to be a neurologist here, but that's helpful. Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you again. That was really great, and I think a lot of information. The link for her information will be online, and we will send an email with the link if you have any other questions.